500,000 years after the alien Talarians brutally slaughtered humanity into near extinction, a young man discovered a hidden ship that would unleash the furious vengeance of Earth's lost children. The war had been swift and merciless. Talarian warships darkened the skies of 100 human worlds, raining plasma fire and gene-tailored bioweapons. Billions perished in the initial onslaught. Organized resistance crumbled within months under the Talarians' overwhelming technological superiority. The few human survivors fled to the stars, reduced to cowering in the shadows of a cold, uncaring galaxy. On a windswept desert world, little more than an obscure footnote in the Talarian Empire's star charts, a human named Billy Simpson stumbled upon a secret that would change everything. Exploring a long-abandoned military bunker, he found the Retribution, an ancient human warship from the desperate final days of the war. But more than just a relic, the ship's databanks contained the horrifying truth of humanity's downfall, and the key to its resurrection. Filled with a righteous fury, Billy began gathering a crew of like-minded human survivors, each nursing their own grudges against the Talarians. Jack Thompson, a grizzled veteran who watched his family burn under Talarian guns. Samantha Rodriguez, a brilliant but erratic engineer with a knack for turning scrap into deadly weapons. Together, they set out to reclaim humanity's lost legacy. Their mission seemed suicidal: recover caches of pre-invasion human tech, all while evading the watchful eyes of their alien overlords. But with each daring raid, each ancient weapon restored to deadly functionality, the embers of resistance began to catch fire. Whispers spread of the ghost ship and its crew striking fear into the hearts of Talarian garrisons. The Talarians responded with swift brutality, dispatching Pollux, the same general who orchestrated Earth's demise, to hunt down the human rebels. But even as the Empire's noose tightened around them, Billy and his followers fought on with desperate resolve, knowing that failure meant the end of humanity's last shred of hope. The stage was set for a final, fateful confrontation that would decide the future of Earth's lost children. For Billy and his ragtag band of survivors, it was more than just a battle against impossible odds. It was a chance to rekindle the flame of human defiance from the ashes of their fallen civilization. The Retribution's engines burned hot as it streaked toward the heart of the Talarian Empire, hell-bent on retribution 500,000 years in the making. The Retribution's cloaking device shimmered as the ship approached the heavily fortified Talarian research facility. Billy Simpson's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the complex, searching for any weakness in its defenses. "All right, listen up," Billy barked, his voice crackling over the comm. "We've got one shot at this. Sam, you're on hacking duty. Get us inside that facility. Jack, you're with me. We're going in hot." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each member slipping into their assigned roles. Sam's fingers flew across her console, her brow furrowed in concentration as she worked to bypass the Talarian security systems. Minutes ticked by in tense silence until finally Sam let out a triumphant whoop. "We're in. I've disabled their alarms and unlocked the service entrance on the east side." Billy nodded, checking the charge on his plasma rifle. "Good work, Sam. Let's move out." He and Jack crept through the dimly lit corridors of the facility, their weapons at the ready. The sterile white walls seemed to close in around them as they delved deeper into the heart of the complex. Suddenly, a scream echoed from up ahead, followed by a string of frantic shouts in the guttural language of the Talarians. Billy and Jack exchanged a glance before rushing toward the commotion. They burst into a large laboratory, and the scene before them made Billy's blood run cold. Rows of containment pods lined the walls, each one holding a human subject in varying states of distress. Talarian scientists scrambled about, barking orders and frantically typing on consoles. In the center of the room, strapped to an examination table, was a woman with short, dark hair and fierce, defiant eyes. Her gaze locked with Billy's, and he knew instantly that she was the source of the scream. "Release her now," Billy demanded, leveling his rifle at the nearest Talarian. The scientist sneered, reaching for a sidearm, but Jack was faster. The Talarian crumpled to the ground, a smoking hole in his chest. Billy rushed to the woman's side, making quick work of her restraints. "Who are you?" he asked as he helped her to her feet. "Dr. Emma Nakamura," she replied, her voice shaky but determined. "I'm a geneticist, the Talarians. They've been experimenting on us, trying to figure out what makes humans so adaptable, so resilient." Emma's eyes widened as realization dawned. "They're afraid of us, of our potential. They're working on a bioweapon, something designed to wipe out the rest of humanity once and for all." Billy's grip tightened on his rifle, his jaw clenching in anger. "Not on my watch," he growled. "You're coming with us, Doctor. We're going to stop these bastards and make them pay for what they've done." As they raced back through the halls, alarms blaring and Talarian soldiers hot on their heels, Billy's mind reeled with the implications of Emma's revelation. The stakes had just gotten higher than ever before. They burst out into the open air, the Retribution's ramp already lowering to receive them. But before they could reach the safety of the ship, a plasma bolt sizzled past Billy's ear, missing him by mere inches. He spun to see Pollux himself striding toward them, flanked by a squad of heavily armed Talarian elites. The general's eyes glinted with malice as he raised his weapon. "Did you really think you could just walk away, Simpson?" Pollux sneered. "You and your pathetic band of rebels have been a thorn in my side for far too long." Billy opened his mouth to retort, but before he could utter a word, Jack stepped forward, his rifle leveled at Pollux's chest. "Get the doctor to the ship, Billy," he said, his voice steady. "I'll hold them off." "Jack, no!" Billy shouted, but it was too late. Jack charged at the Talarians, unleashing a hail of plasma fire. The elites scattered, caught off guard by the ferocity of his attack. Billy hesitated, torn between the desire to fight alongside his friend and the knowledge that he had to get Emma to safety. With a final, anguished look at Jack, he turned and ran, half dragging the doctor up the ramp and into the Retribution. As the ship lifted off, Billy watched through the viewport as Jack fought on, a lone human warrior against a sea of Talarian might. He took down soldier after soldier, his rifle blazing, until finally a plasma bolt caught him square in the chest. Billy's scream of rage and grief echoed through the ship as Jack fell, his body disappearing beneath a swarm of Talarian boots. The Retribution shuddered as Sam pushed the engines to their limit, rocketing them away from the facility and out into the stars. In the days that followed, Billy threw himself into the fight with a newfound intensity, his every waking moment consumed by thoughts of vengeance. With Emma's knowledge of the Talarians' bioweapon and Sam's technical prowess, they began to develop countermeasures, determined to thwart the aliens' genocidal plans. Word of their successes spread like wildfire through the scattered remnants of humanity, and soon, other rebel groups began to emerge, each one flocking to Billy's banner. Oppressed alien races, too, saw in Billy a chance for freedom, and they rallied to his cause, swelling the ranks of the resistance. They established a secret base on a remote, uncharted world, a hidden fortress from which they could launch their attacks against the Talarian Empire. As the rebels grew in strength and number, Billy began to plan for the ultimate offensive, a daring strike against Talaria Prime itself. But even as the resistance gained momentum, the Talarians were not idle. Pollux, enraged by the humiliation of Billy's escape and the growing threat of the rebels, redoubled his efforts to hunt them down. He became increasingly ruthless, his tactics growing more brutal and oppressive with each passing day. Whispers began to spread of dissent within the Talarian ranks, of warlords and politicians who sought to capitalize on the chaos for their own gain. The once monolithic empire began to fracture, weakened by internal strife and the relentless attacks of the rebels. Seizing the opportunity, Billy and his crew embarked on a series of daring missions, striking at key Talarian facilities and gathering vital intelligence on the bioweapon project. They hit research labs, production plants, and supply depots, each blow bringing them one step closer to their ultimate goal. At the same time, Billy worked tirelessly to unite the disparate rebel factions, knowing that only a coordinated, galaxy-wide effort would have any hope of toppling the Talarian Empire. He forged alliances, brokered truces, and rallied the oppressed peoples of 100 worlds to his cause. And through it all, the memory of Jack's sacrifice burned bright in Billy's mind, a constant reminder of the price of failure. He would not let his friend's death be in vain. He would see the Talarians pay for their crimes, and he would not rest until humanity was free once more. Billy Simpson stared at the screen, his legs shaking from the information scrolling before him. "This can't be real," he muttered, turning to Dr. Emma Nakamura. "Are you seeing this?" Emma nodded, her eyes wide with disbelief. "It's true, Billy. A hidden human colony, thriving for centuries right under the Talarians' noses." The discovery of New Eden sent shockwaves through the Retribution's crew. After so long believing they were the last remnants of humanity, hope bloomed anew. Establishing contact proved challenging. New Eden's leaders, hardened by centuries of isolation, met Billy's hails with suspicion. It took weeks of careful negotiation before they agreed to a face-to-face meeting. Billy stood on the bridge as the Retribution approached New Eden's coordinates. A massive asteroid field loomed ahead, expertly camouflaging the colony's true location. Suddenly, a transmission crackled through. "Unidentified vessel, state your purpose," a gruff voice demanded. Billy took a deep breath. "This is Billy Simpson of the Human Resistance. We've come seeking alliance against our common enemy." A tense silence followed. Then, like a mirage taking shape, a sprawling space station materialized among the asteroids. Its sleek design and advanced shielding technology left Billy awestruck. As they docked, Billy and Emma were escorted to a conference room. The New Eden Council, led by a stern-faced woman named Alexandra, regarded them warily. "So," Alexandra began, "you claim to lead a resistance against the Talarians. Why should we risk our centuries of safety to join your cause?" Billy laid out the situation, the growing rebellion, the scattered human survivors, and the Talarians' relentless pursuit. As he spoke, he saw the counselor's expressions shift from skepticism to grudging respect. "We have something that could turn the tide," Alexandra said finally. "Follow me." She led them to a massive hangar where a colossal cannon stood, its barrel stretching the length of a starship. "The Nexus cannon," Alexandra explained, "capable of obliterating entire fleets with a single shot." Billy whistled low. "That's one hell of a weapon. What's the catch?" Alexandra's expression darkened. "It requires progenium, an incredibly rare energy source. We've mapped potential deposits, but they're scattered across heavily guarded Talarian space." And so began a new chapter in the Resistance. The Retribution, joined by ships from New Eden, embarked on a series of high-stakes missions to secure progenium. Each operation brought them closer to their goal, but at a terrible cost. During a raid on a Talarian mining facility, disaster struck. Sam Rodriguez, Billy's trusted engineer and friend, was captured by Pollux's forces. Billy watched helplessly as Sam was dragged away, screaming defiance at his captors. Days passed with no word. Then, a transmission from Pollux himself. Billy's blood ran cold as he watched footage of Sam, battered and bloody, yet refusing to break under interrogation. "Tell me what I want to know," Pollux snarled, and the pain stops. Sam spat blood. "Go to hell, you overgrown lizard." The feed cut out. Hours later, they received confirmation. Sam was dead, having taken the rebellion's secrets to his grave. Grief and rage consumed Billy. He threw himself into the fight with renewed fury, pushing himself and his crew to the limit. New Eden's advanced tech allowed them to establish a web of hidden bases and supply lines, slowly but surely strengthening the rebellion's position. As the human forces grew bolder, they began striking at Talarian strongholds. Factories burned. Shipyards were reduced to scrap. The once mighty empire began to show cracks. Pollux, maddened by his failures, lashed out wildly. His tactics grew increasingly brutal and ineffective, costing the Talarians dearly in ships and lives. Word spread of the growing human threat. On subjugated worlds, whispers of rebellion took hold. Billy and his allies worked tirelessly, forging alliances with other oppressed species. In the Talarian capital, Voices of dissent grew louder. Some called for negotiation, others for even harsher crackdowns. The empire that had stood unchallenged for millennia now teetered on the brink of civil war. Billy knew the time to strike was approaching. As the Nexus cannon neared completion, he gathered his forces. Human, New Eden, and alien alike stood ready to cast off the chains of Talarian rule. The final pieces were falling into place. Billy looked out at the assembled fleet, knowing that the fate of galaxies hung in the balance. Whatever came next, the Talarians would learn the terrible price of their actions. Humanity's children were coming home, and vengeance burned in their hearts. The Retribution shuddered as another blast from the Talarian defense platforms glanced off its shields. Billy gripped the command chair, his knuckles tightening. "Status report!" "Shields at 62%, called out the tactical officer. "The Nexus cannon is charged and ready to fire, sir." Billy nodded grimly. "All ships, this is it. Concentrate your fire on Grid Sector 7 Alpha. We're going to punch a hole right through their defenses." The rebel fleet moved as one, a deadly dance of ships and energy weapons. At the center of it all, the massive form of the Nexus cannon began to glow with otherworldly power. "Fire!" Billy roared. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the cannon, tearing through space and slamming into Talaria Prime's planetary shield. For a moment, it seemed like even this ultimate weapon might fail. Then, with a flash that lit up half the system, the shield collapsed. Cheers erupted across the bridge, but Billy knew the real fight was just beginning. "All ships, push forward! Ground teams, prepare for deployment!" As the fleet engaged the remaining Talarian ships, Billy led his strike team to the surface. They touched down near the capital's central command center, plasma bolts sizzling past their heads as they sprinted for cover. "Emma, can you hack their security?" Billy shouted over the din of battle. Dr. Nakamura's fingers flew over her datapad. "Almost got it, we're in." They fought their way through twisting corridors, Billy's heart pounding with each step. Finally, they reached the towering doors of the High Council chamber. Billy took a deep breath, then nodded to his team. They burst in, weapons at the ready. The Talarian High Council sat before them, scales gleaming in the artificial light. Billy stepped forward, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Your empire is finished," he declared. "Surrender now, and we can end this without further bloodshed." The Supreme Commander, a massive Talarian with battle-scarred scales, sneered. "You think you've won, human? We will never bow to your kind." Before Billy could respond, alarms blared throughout the complex. Explosions rocked the building as a new wave of attackers swarmed in, Talarian rebels, turning on their own leadership in a bid for power. In the chaos that followed, Billy and his team managed to subdue several council members, including the Supreme Commander. They retreated under heavy fire, their prisoners in tow. As they fought their way back to their ship, Billy's communicator crackled to life. "Sir, we have an urgent situation on New Eden." Billy's blood ran cold as he listened to the report. Pollux had launched a desperate assault on the hidden colony, hoping to use it as leverage against the rebels. "We need to get back there now," Billy ordered, his mind racing. But even as they raced across the stars, he knew they might already be too late. Billy stood atop a crumbling skyscraper, surveying the ruins of New York City. The once mighty skyline now stood as a testament to humanity's fall. Twisted metal and shattered concrete stretched as far as the eye could see. "It's worse than we imagined," Dr. Nakamura said, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. Billy nodded, his mind focused. "But we're home, and we'll rebuild it all." The colonization ships hung in low orbit, their hulls gleaming in the weak sunlight. As Billy watched, dropships began descending, carrying the first wave of settlers to Earth's surface. Days turned to weeks as humanity set to work. Billy led from the front, clearing rubble and laying foundations for new structures. The air was thick with dust and the constant hum of machinery. One morning, as Billy helped install a water purification system, an urgent call came through his communicator. "Sir, we've detected strange energy readings in Sector 7, a technician reported. Billy frowned. What kind of readings? Unknown, sir, but they're consistent with Talarian tech. Billy's blood ran cold. He assembled a team and set out to investigate. As they approached the coordinates, hidden defense turrets sprang to life, filling the air with plasma bolts. Take cover! Billy shouted, diving behind a fallen pillar. The battle raged for hours. Billy's team fought their way through waves of automated defenses, uncovering a network of hidden Talarian installations. This goes deeper than we thought, Billy muttered, studying a holographic map they'd recovered. There's a central hub beneath the old city. They gathered their forces and launched an assault on the underground complex. The narrow corridors echoed with gunfire and the screams of the wounded. Billy led from the front, his rifle blazing as they pushed deeper into the Talarian stronghold. Finally, they breached the command center. Talarian defenders put up fierce resistance, but Billy's team overwhelmed them. As the dust settled, Billy noticed a Talarian officer trying to destroy a computer terminal. Stop him! Billy shouted. They subdued the Talarian, who snarled and hissed as they restrained him. Who are you? Billy demanded. The Talarian sneered. I am General Crandor, and you humans have sealed your doom by returning here. Under interrogation, Crandor revealed the Talarian's final, cruel surprise, a mutagenic virus designed to sterilize any humans who tried to resettle Earth. Billy's fists clenched as he processed this information. He turned to Dr. Nakamura. Can you stop it? Emma's eyes blazed with perseverance. We'll find a way. We have to. As Emma and her team worked tirelessly to develop a countermeasure, Billy coordinated efforts to secure and rebuild Earth's major population centers. They cleared out lingering Talarian threats and established the foundations of a new civilization. Word spread quickly of humanity's return to their ancestral home. Soon, ships began arriving from across the galaxy, carrying humans and allied species eager to be part of the resettlement. Among the newcomers were groups of humans who had managed to evade Talarian capture. They brought with them strange customs and technologies, products of centuries of isolation. Billy watched as a group of these lost tribe humans performed a ritual dance in the newly established central square. Their movements were alien, yet hauntingly familiar. It's incredible, Emma said, standing beside him. They've preserved pieces of our culture we thought were lost forever. But not all was harmonious. Tensions flared as different factions competed for resources and influence in the fledgling society. Billy found himself mediating disputes almost daily, trying to keep the peace as Earth's population swelled. In a packed meeting hall, Billy addressed representatives from various groups. We must stand united, he urged. Our strength lies in our diversity, but also in our ability to work together. We need a strong, centralized government to guide us through these challenging times. Murmurs of agreement and dissent rippled through the crowd. Billy knew the road ahead would be difficult, but as he looked out at the faces of humans and aliens alike, he felt a spark of hope. Humanity had reclaimed its home, and together, they would forge a new future among the stars. The jubilant atmosphere of Earth's resettlement soon soured as a new threat emerged from within. Billy Simpson stood at the podium, addressing a crowd of thousands in the newly constructed Unity Square. As he spoke of cooperation and shared progress, angry shouts erupted from the back. Humans only, Earth for Earthborn. Billy's security detail tensed, hands hovering near weapons. He raised his voice, trying to regain control. Please, we must work together. A man with fiery eyes and a charismatic presence pushed to the front. Don't listen to this traitor, he bellowed. I am Joachim Kraus and I speak for true humanity. The crowd's mood shifted palpably. Some cheered Kraus, others booed, but all eyes were on him as he continued his impassioned speech. We didn't fight the Talarians just to hand our planet to more aliens. The Vren, the Krellick, they're no better than our oppressors. Billy tried to interject, but Kraus's words struck a chord with many. As the days passed, the movement Kraus dubbed Terra Primist gained traction, especially among isolated human communities still bearing the scars of Talarian rule. Tensions boiled over one sweltering afternoon. Billy received an urgent call from the Vren district. "Sir, there's been an explosion," his aide reported, voice shaking. Billy rushed to the scene. The acrid smell of smoke filled the air as emergency crews sifted through rubble. Vren children wailed, their multifaceted eyes reflecting the flames. The bomb had torn through an apartment complex, leaving dozens dead. In the aftermath, Billy made the hardest decision of his life. He sat in his office, surrounded by advisors, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. "We have no choice," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Declare martial law. Bring in Kraus and his top people." The riots that followed made the earlier unrest seem tame. Billy watched from a secure bunker as cities burned. Kraus's followers, now calling themselves Terra Primists, clashed with security forces in the streets. "We need to end this now," Nick Carter, Billy's most trusted ally, insisted. "Give me a team. We'll bring Kraus in." Billy nodded, knowing the risks. Hours later, he watched the feed as Nick's squad stormed Kraus's compound. Gunfire erupted, but when the smoke cleared, Kraus was in custody. Victory was short-lived. Terra Primist cells went underground, vowing continued resistance. Billy knew conventional tactics wouldn't be enough. That's when the offer came. Crandor, the captured Talarian general, sat across from Billy, scales glinting in the harsh light. "You need my help," Crandor hissed. "I can give you the tools to crush this insurgency." Billy's fists clenched. Every fiber of his being screamed not to trust the alien, but desperation won out. "What do you want?" "Freedom," Crandor replied simply. The decision haunted Billy, but Crandor's intelligence proved invaluable. Slowly, methodically, order was restored. When Kraus's trial began, Billy allowed himself a moment of hope. But as he looked out over the reclaimed Earth, Billy knew the battle for humanity's soul was just the beginning. New schools and cultural centers rose alongside the rebuilding efforts, but whispers of discontent still echoed. And now, a new shadow loomed. Reports trickled in of strange activity in the outer systems. Someone was hunting for leftover Talarian weapons caches. Billy stared at the stars, wondering what fresh hell awaited them. Billy Simpson stood at the helm of the command ship, his eyes fixed on the swirling gases of the nebula ahead. The fleet's sensors probed the cosmic dust, searching for any sign of the harrowers. "Anything?" Billy asked, his voice tense. Dr. Nakamura shook her head, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "Nothing yet. The nebula's interfering with our scans." Suddenly, alarms blared. A massive shape emerged from the nebula's depths, Crandor's flagship, flanked by a swarm of smaller vessels. "All ships, battle stations," Billy barked into the comm. "This ends now." The space around them erupted in chaos. Energy beams lanced between vessels, and explosions bloomed in the void. Billy gripped the edge of the command console as their ship rocked from a near miss. "We need to get aboard that flagship," he said, turning to Dr. Nakamura and the assembled strike team. "You know the plan." They raced to the transporter room, dodging sparks from damaged conduits. As they materialized on Crandor's ship, the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled their nostrils. "This way," Dr. Nakamura whispered, consulting her tricorder. "The virus samples should be in the main lab." They crept through dimly lit corridors, the ship shuddering around them from the battle outside. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a squad of Harrower soldiers. "Go!" Billy shouted, diving for cover as plasma bolts sizzled past. "Get to the lab! We'll hold them off!" Dr. Nakamura and her team sprinted down the hallway as Billy and the others returned fire. The air crackled with energy discharges, and the metallic tang of ozone filled the air. In the lab, Dr. Nakamura's hands flew over the containment units, securing the virus samples. "Got them!" she called into her comm. Suddenly, Crandor's voice boomed over the ship's speakers. "You're too late, humans. This ship will be your tomb." Klaxons wailed as the self-destruct sequence initiated. Dr. Nakamura's team raced back through the corridors, the virus samples clutched tightly. They found Billy and the others pinned down by heavy fire. "We need to go now," Dr. Nakamura shouted. As they prepared to flee, Crandor himself appeared at the end of the hallway, his scales gleaming in the emergency lighting. "Nakamura!" he roared. "The samples!" For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, to everyone's shock, Crandor lunged forward, clearing a path through his own men. "Go!" he snarled at the humans. "I'll hold them off. It's the only way to stop this madness." Billy hesitated for a split second, then nodded. "Thank you," he said quietly. They sprinted for the transporter room as Crandor engaged his former allies. The ship bucked and heaved around them as the self-destruct countdown neared 0. "Energize!" Billy shouted as they reached the transporter pad. They materialized back on their own ship just as Crandor's flagship erupted in a massive fireball. The shockwave buffeted the Allied fleet, but the day was won. In the aftermath, as the fleet limped home, Billy stared out at the stars. The virus samples were secure, but the cost had been high. Nick Carter was gone, and countless others had fallen in the battle. "What now?" Dr. Nakamura asked softly, joining him at the viewport. Billy's eyes sharp. "Now we make sure this never happens again. We find every last harrower cell, every sympathizer, and we remember those who gave everything to get us here." As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Billy knew the fight was just the beginning, but humanity had proven once again that it would not go quietly into the night. Billy's eyes scanned the holographic display, each blinking red dot representing another human colony lost to the void. The victory against the harrowers felt hollow now, as he faced the monumental task of reuniting a fractured humanity. "We need to move fast," he said, turning to his advisors. "Every moment we delay, more of our people slip away." Within days, Billy found himself aboard the diplomatic vessel Starbridge, embarking on a journey to the far reaches of known space. The ship hummed beneath his feet as they dropped out of hyperspace near a massive asteroid field. "Sanctuary Collective, dead ahead," the pilot announced. As they approached, Billy saw the asteroids were linked by gleaming tunnels and domes, a city hidden in plain sight. Suddenly, alarms blared. "Multiple weapon locks," the tactical officer shouted. "They're powering up their defenses." Billy leaned into the comm. "This is Billy Simpson of Earth. We come in peace." Tense seconds ticked by. Finally, a gruff voice crackled through the speakers. "Earth is dead. Leave now, or be destroyed." Hours of negotiations followed, conducted through tightly encrypted channels. Billy's throat was raw from talking when a shuttle finally docked with the Starbridge. The sanctuary leader, a stern woman named Adira, strode onto the bridge. Her piercing gaze swept over Billy and his crew. "So," she said, "Earth lives. Prove to me why we should care." Billy spent days showcasing Earth's rebirth, the alliances they'd forged, the threats they'd overcome. Slowly, Adira's icy demeanor thawed. "Your resilience is impressive," she admitted. "Perhaps there is hope for humanity after all." With the Sanctuary Collective's support secured, Billy turned his attention to the Forge clan. Their world loomed before him, a desolate ball of rock and ice. "No response to hails," the communications officer reported. Billy frowned. "Take us in closer." As they entered orbit, massive gun emplacements swiveled to track their approach. A transmission cut through the silence. "Leave now, outsider," a harsh voice growled. "This is your only warning." Despite days of attempts, the Forge clan refused to budge. Billy paced the bridge, frustration evident in every step. "We can't force them," he muttered, "but we can't leave them as a potential threat." In the end, a fragile agreement was reached. The Forge clan would remain neutral, neither friend nor foe. As the Starbridge departed, Billy couldn't shake the feeling they'd only delayed an inevitable confrontation. Weeks later, deep in former Talarian space, Billy stood before a nightmare made real. The secret research facility loomed before him, its sterile corridors echoing with the screams of the damned. "My God," Dr. Nakamura whispered beside him, "what have they done?" Row upon row of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a twisted parody of humanity. Some had extra limbs, others bulging craniums or translucent skin. As Billy's team moved through the facility, alarms blared. Talarian security drones swarmed from hidden compartments. "Get those pods open!" Billy shouted, ducking behind a console as energy blasts sizzled overhead. In the chaos of battle, a single pod hissed open. A man stumbled out, his eyes wild with centuries of pent-up rage. "I am Ezekiel," he croaked, voice raw from disuse, last of the old guard. In the days that followed, Ezekiel proved both blessing and curse. His knowledge unlocked forgotten technologies, but his hatred for all things alien threatened to tear apart the fragile alliances Billy had forged. As Billy grappled with these new challenges, Dr. Nakamura burst into his office, face ashen. "The virus," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's mutating, and it's here, on Earth." Billy's blood ran cold. He activated the emergency broadcast system, his voice echoing across the planet and beyond. "This is not a drill. We are under attack by an invisible enemy. All non-essential travel between worlds is hereby suspended. We will get through this, but only if we stand united." As the first reports of infections trickled in, Billy knew the real fight for humanity's future had only just begun. The first reports of infections sent shockwaves through Earth's population. In New Beijing, crowds surged through the streets, desperate to escape the rapidly spreading contagion. Billy watched from the command center as evacuation ships lifted off, their hulls gleaming in the afternoon sun. "How many more can we get out?" he asked, his voice hoarse from hours of crisis management. An aide shook her head. "We're at capacity, sir. The remaining ships are needed for essential personnel and medical supplies." Billy's fists clenched as he watched the panicked faces on the security feeds. He'd fought so hard to rebuild Earth, and now it was slipping away again. Ezekiel's gravelly voice cut through the din of the command center. "We must act now before it's too late. The Forge clan cannot be allowed to remain a wild card." Billy hesitated, weighing the lives at stake against the political fallout. Finally, he nodded. "Do it." Hours later, Billy stood on the bridge of the assault carrier Defiant as it dropped out of hyperspace near the Forge clan's stronghold. A swarm of smaller craft launched from its hangar bay, streaking towards the rocky world below. "They've detected us," the tactical officer reported. "Planetary defenses powering up." Energy beams lanced out from the planet's surface, catching several fighters in their deadly embrace. The bridge rocked as return fire pummeled the Defiant's shields. "Push through," Billy ordered. "We can't let them wait us out." The battle raged for hours, but in the end, superior numbers and desperation won out. Billy watched grimly as the Forge clan's leaders were led aboard in restraints, their faces a mix of fury and fear. Back on Earth, Dr. Nakamura's team worked feverishly in their sealed lab. Holographic displays flickered with rapidly changing data as they struggled to keep pace with the virus's mutations. "We're close," Nakamura muttered, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "Just need to stabilize the protein chains." A sudden explosion rocked the lab, shattering equipment and sending alarms blaring. Through the smoke, Dr. Alexis Corwin emerged, a stolen vial clutched in her hand. "For the harrowers!" she screamed, smashing the vial on the floor. Security teams swarmed in, subduing Corwin, but the damage was done. Months of work lay in ruins around them. Billy knew they needed a new plan. He assembled a strike team, including Jake Carter, whose eyes burned with the same intensity his father's had. "We're going into the heart of Talarian space," Billy told them. "It's a long shot, but it's all we've got." Their ship slipped through the void, evading patrols and automated defenses. They touched down on a barren moon, the hidden Talarian facility looming before them. Inside, they fought their way through twisting corridors, exchanging fire with fanatical Talarian warriors. Jake's skills matched his father's, his plasma rifle cutting down enemies with deadly precision. They reached the vault containing the original virus, but alarms blared as they secured the sample. The facility began to shake around them. "Self-destruct sequence activated," an emotionless voice announced. They ran, dodging falling debris and collapsing corridors. A stray energy blast caught Jake in the side and he stumbled. "Go!" he shouted to Billy, pressing the virus sample into his hands. "Complete the mission!" Billy hesitated, but Jake shoved him towards the exit. "It's what my father would have done," Jake said, a pained smile on his face. As their ship lifted off, Billy watched the facility erupt in a massive fireball. Jake's sacrifice burdened immensely on him, but the mission was a success. Dr. Nakamura's team worked tirelessly with the recovered sample, but the mutated strain continued to spread. Billy was forced to make impossible choices, ordering entire sectors quarantined and bombarded to contain the outbreak. With options dwindling, Billy turned to the Sanctuary Collective. Their leader, Adira, listened to his plea with an impassive face. "We will help," she said finally, "but our independence is non-negotiable. We become full members of the Alliance with equal say in all decisions." Billy nodded, knowing the price was steep but necessary. The combined efforts of human and sanctuary scientists finally bore fruit. A potent retrovirus was developed, capable of neutralizing the Talarian strain. As ships fanned out across the galaxy, deploying the cure, Billy allowed himself a moment of hope. But he knew the cost had been staggering, and new challenges loomed on the horizon. Billy Simpson stood before the holographic display, his face cast in an eerie blue glow. The image showed a massive Talarian warship, its hull overflowing with weaponry. "This is Grand Inquisitor Velzarak's command vessel," he said, his voice low and tense. "Our intelligence suggests it houses a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems." Dr. Nakamura leaned forward, her eyes widening. "A singularity bomb? I thought that was just theoretical." "Not anymore," Billy replied, tapping a control to zoom in on the ship's core. "Velzarak plans to use it on Earth." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Admiral Chen smacked his fist on the table. "How did we not know about this?" Billy's eyes sharp. "Because we've been compromised." He tapped another control, bringing up the image of a familiar face. "Colonel Reeves has been feeding intel to the Talarians for months." The stunned silence was deafening. Reeves had been one of Billy's most trusted advisors. "I want every communication, every order he's given scrutinized," Billy ordered. "We need to root out any other sympathizers before—" A deafening explosion rocked the command center. Alarms blared as the lights flickered and died. "We're under attack!" someone shouted. Billy sprinted to the window, watching in horror as Talarian ships descended on the city. Energy beams lanced down, shattering buildings and vaporizing defensive emplacements. "They're hitting every major population center," Admiral Chen reported, his voice strained. "Our orbital defenses are offline." Billy's mind raced. They needed a plan, fast. As if in answer to his thoughts, a message flashed across his personal comm unit. The sender's name made his blood run cold. Crandor. He opened it, reading quickly. "I know how to stop Velzarak," it said. "Meet me at these coordinates. Come alone." Billy hesitated for a split second, then made his decision. "Admiral, you have command. I'm going to try to end this." Hours later, Billy found himself aboard a stolen Talarian scout ship, piloting through a debris field towards Velzarak's flagship. Dr. Nakamura sat beside him, checking her weapon. In the back, Ezekiel paced restlessly, his face a mask of barely contained rage. "We should just blow them all to hell," Ezekiel growled. "And risk detonating the singularity bomb?" Dr. Nakamura shot back. "We'd destroy half the galaxy." Billy ignored their bickering, focusing on the massive ship looming before them. A comm channel crackled to life. "This is Crandor," a familiar voice said. "I'm lowering the shields on Docking Bay 3. You'll have 30 seconds before they come back online." Billy gunned the engines, streaking towards the opening. They slipped inside just as the energy barrier flickered back to life. The moment they touched down, all hell broke loose. Talarian troops swarmed into the hangar, energy weapons blazing. Billy dove for cover, returning fire. Dr. Nakamura's precision shots dropped 2 enemies in quick succession. Ezekiel charged forward with a primal roar, his hatred for the Talarians overriding all caution. "Ezekiel, wait!" Billy shouted, but it was too late. The former resistance fighter was pinned down, cut off from the others. Billy cursed under his breath. He needed to end this quickly. "Cover me!" he yelled to Dr. Nakamura, then sprinted towards Ezekiel's position. Plasma bolts sizzled past his head as he ran. He tackled Ezekiel, dragging him behind a stack of crates. "We do this together," Billy hissed, "or we all die. Understand?" Ezekiel nodded grudgingly. Together they fought their way back to Dr. Nakamura's position. "The bomb's this way," Crander's voice crackled over their comms. "Hurry!" They battled through twisting corridors, the ship shuddering around them as the battle raged outside. Finally, they reached a massive blast door. "It's in there," Crander said, materializing from the shadows. "But it's already primed to detonate." Billy's heart sank as the door slid open, revealing the singularity bomb. A swirling vortex of impossible darkness pulsed at its core, and a countdown timer ticked steadily towards 0. "Can you disable it?" he asked Dr. Nakamura. She studied the device, her face grim. "I can try, but we don't have much time." Suddenly, a cold laugh echoed through the chamber. Grand Inquisitor Velzarak stepped into view, his eyes gleaming with malice. "You're too late, humans," he sneered. "Your pitiful species ends today." Billy raised his weapon, but Velzarak was faster. A blast of energy sent Billy's gun flying. The Talarian closed the distance in an instant, his fist connecting with Billy's jaw. The two enemies grappled, trading vicious blows. Billy felt his ribs crack under Velzarak's inhuman strength. He stumbled, nearly falling into the singularity bomb's containment field. An idea flashed through Billy's mind. With a burst of desperate strength, he grabbed Velzarak's arm and pulled. The Talarian's eyes widened in shock as he toppled towards the swirling vortex. "No!" Velzarak screamed as the singularity's gravity took hold. In an instant, he vanished into the impossible darkness. Billy collapsed, gasping for breath. "Dr. Nakamura?" "Almost there," she called back, her fingers flying over the bomb's control panel. "Got it!" The countdown froze with seconds to spare. Billy let out a shaky breath. "We need to go," Crandor urged. "This ship is about to—" A massive explosion rocked the vessel, cutting off Crandor's words. Alarms blared as the deck lurched beneath their feet. "Run!" Billy shouted. They sprinted for the hangar bay, the ship disintegrating around them. Crandor brought up the rear, laying down covering fire as Talarian troops pursued them. They reached the stolen scout ship just as another explosion tore through the hangar. Billy threw himself into the pilot's seat, firing up the engines. "Crandor, come on!" he yelled. The Talarian general stood at the foot of the ramp, still firing at the oncoming troops. "Go!" he shouted. "I'll buy you time." Before Billy could protest, Crandor slammed the ramp controls. The last thing Billy saw was Crandor's determined face as the hatch sealed shut. Billy pushed the engines to their limit, rocketing out of the disintegrating Talarian flagship. Behind them, the massive ship erupted in a cataclysmic explosion, taking Velzarak's forces with it. As they limped back towards Earth, Billy's comm unit crackled to life. Reports flooded in from across human space. Coordinated Talarian attacks, devastating losses, entire worlds in chaos. Billy's hands tightened on the controls. They'd stopped the singularity bomb, but at what cost? The real work was just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.